We're back on the second night of a back-to-back for the Philadelphia 76ers after officially being eliminated from playoff contention on Saturday. The big game tonight as they host the Toronto Raptors. It was a little bit of a bigger game earlier in the week, but it's still a big game nonetheless. Raptors, Sixers tonight from South Philadelphia. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Pregame show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Alongside Rich Hoffman, I'm Devon Givens. Bree, as always, producing. Gavini starting us off in the chat with Daniel as well, just jumping in. So everybody come on in on a Sunday and hang out with us and talk about the big game that it is. We'll get to the starters, the pregame picks a little bit later, and we'll have some prospect watch later on tonight for the postgame and all with the Tank Watch. There's one big game for Tank Watch that we'll focus on in the postgame show. But Rich, good to be back with you. And we've been waiting for this one. A little bit of juice taken off of it because the Raptors have a full 4-game lead over the Philadelphia 76ers. But with that being said, it's still an important projected lottery balls for draft lottery night game for the 76ers.
I mean, for the Sixers, it's the exact same, right?
Yes.
With them in Brooklyn neck and neck, Sixers have inched out a little bit ahead of Brooklyn in the opposite direction, have backed up a step further than them. It's still important. But you're right. Toronto's not going to catch the Sixers. The Sixers would have to win 4 times to catch them. Don't think that's going to happen at this point. But Toronto's kind of in no man's land when you look at the standings, man. They're 4.5 back of the Spurs, but they're also 3.5 up on the Nets as well. So I would imagine they're actually just going to settle into that spot. They tried. They're trying tonight too. As we know, they got Quickly and Jake Puddle sat down for tonight's game.
Love Jake Puddle.
Jake Puddle. You remember that from Game of Zones?
Yes, absolutely.
With the Kawhi trade. That's not really fair. Jacob Podol is out for tonight's game, but they still have Scotty Barnes. He is an all-star after all. You have to play him. The Sixers, they're countering with sitting down their own very good player who has never made an all-star team before, and that is Quentin Grimes. Saw that he was tweeting about the Houston basketball game earlier today.
That's where his focus was.
Sure. And you know what I have to say about that? Good.
Yes. You were calling for this last night. You said he should rest tonight for this basketball game. But just the importance, just to let everybody know once again who maybe missed it yesterday, that the Brooklyn Nets, they won their basketball game over the Washington Wizards last night where the Philadelphia 76ers lost. So the Sixers currently a half a game back of the Brooklyn Nets in the standings right now. So they are sole possession of the 5th worst record in the NBA with 8 games remaining, including tonight. So with that, the Sixers and the Nets, they did split their season series at 2-2. So where we are right now, half a game up right now are the Nets over the Philadelphia 76ers in terms of where their record is. But with that being said, just in general, Rich, again, we looked at this one that this might be a big game. Nothing has changed for the Sixers while it has changed for the Raptors. And as you talked about, just the importance of, look, there's no need for, we've talked about this in general. There's no need for Quentin Grimes to be playing the remainder of the way. Yabusele is now dealing with some knee issues again. He's been dealing with some stuff basically all year long. And with him dealing with this stuff all year long, I mean, give the guy a break. He doesn't have anything else left to prove either. You either want him back and you can afford him or you can't. And so there's nothing else left except for just putting out there a decent enough amount of veterans out there on the floor that are going to be out there with those young guys to conduct themselves as a professional basketball team. That's it. Other than that, listen, man, this is just a big game for the 76ers with 8 games. It's a different big game than we would expect with 8 games remaining in the season, where we thought they would be fighting for a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, maybe fighting with the Knicks, maybe with the Celtics and positioning, jockeying for positioning. Right now, instead, it's the Detroit Pistons, the Indiana Pacers, fighting for that positioning and not the Philadelphia 76ers. So a different version of a big game for the Sixers.
How about Detroit being involved in the playoffs?
Even with the Sixers just stinking, I did not expect this season from the Detroit Pistons at all.
It kind of validates my point that there are a lot of good coaches in the NBA too, because think about what happened here. The Cavs said to JB Bickerstaff, we think we can do better than you. And they bring in Kenny Atkinson, and they have had a terrific season. They have been fantastic. Kenny Atkinson has them running a very nice offense with their two big men. But JB Bickerstaff gets a job immediately in Detroit, and he does a great job as well, right? They're going to be, they are fighting for home court advantage right now, but they are going to be in the top 6 and, surrounded by Cade Cunningham. They play really hard defense. They've got a great season from Malik Beasley. Have you seen his shooting numbers, by the way, Beasley?
Recently, no.
He's making like 40% of his threes on Curry level bombing from 3. Obviously, he's not shooting the same shots Steph is, but he's getting up about as many of them. So anyway, that is maybe an aside for next year as well. So yeah, we are in the tank bowl. Yabusele also he struggled last night.
He did. Yeah. 1 point. We didn't talk about him last night, but he had 1 point.
He had 1 point in a game where I think earlier in this season, if he would have been one of the main players on the team. And the Sixers did have Grimes, and they had Edwards, and Edwards has been playing well recently. But if that was earlier this season and Yabusele has the chance to score a bunch more,
would have had 20.
I feel like he would have had 15 or 20, right? Yeah. And so maybe he's a little bit gassed. And so if you want to give him the night off too as well, just as kind of a reward, like, hey, man, you look gassed. We're going to need you to play the end of the season. You got to play somebody. And he clearly is one of those players. But giving him the night off, it's tough, man. You said this at the beginning of the month. They play 4 games a week in this month of March. It's a lot.
That's a lot of basketball games, including the basketball players that are playing for the 76ers. And we alluded to this a little bit last night, where you have so many of these young players, including veterans, if you will, of Quentin Grimes, Jared Butler, who has been in the league for a few years, not like he hasn't been around. Yabusele has been in the league before, but you have Bona, Edwards. You look at other players that have Lonnie Walker just got back, but he's a veteran coming in here. These guys are playing a lot of minutes, man. A lot of minutes that they're not used to. So while the Sixers are going out there and they're competing, and I see we talked about this ourselves, still see a lot of that sentiment out there of how hard these players are going out there and competing and
they're
playing
and
trying. And you feel bad for them that they're the ones that are piling up these L's that are going to go on their records when you look at Basketball Reference. But that being said, it's also just the minutes. They have no chance. They'll be in some games because they're just giving more effort. And we've talked about it yesterday of how certain teams and certain players approach the final 15, 20 games because of the positioning and the jockeying for the stats and all. I mean, for the lottery and all of where you will be. And with it, you have these guys out there competing, but they can only compete for so long because the talent level is just totally different when you're playing a good basketball team opposite you. So when you're playing even a marginal basketball team like the Atlanta Hawks, for instance, they're better than you because they have an all-star and they have a really good number 1 overall pick, and they have a group of veterans that have played in the league for a while, from George Niang to Clint Capella to now Okongwu and Karis LeVert, who was also acquired, Terrence Mann in the trade, that they're marginally good, but they're way better than the collection of talent that the Sixers are throwing out there. And with it, you're just not going to win when you have these players out there just getting used to the NBA game, don't know each other, as you pointed out last night, and then they've never played this amount of minutes in an NBA environment ever. And even in college, you play 40 minutes, but they probably play 20, 25.
They play twice a week, too.
And they play twice a week. So with that, this stuff is starting to pile up on their body. Even somebody like Ricky, who's always going to go 100 miles per hour, and you can see where he can take advantage of it. But sometimes you see where it affects Ricky. And that's just where we are right now with this group.
So let me ask you a question, because we're talking about these deep role players getting a shot. And I do feel bad for them as well. I also think they look at it as, okay, this is an opportunity for us, though, right? We have a chance to establish ourselves as NBA players. So there's positives and negatives to it. I mean, they're going to do so while losing a bunch of games, too, and that definitely is hard. So a question for you, just looking at the Eastern Conference standings. Now, we don't know what this offseason is going to look like, not even for the Sixers, but for anybody else. So there could be some crazy things happening. But with the emergence of Detroit and Indiana, you have those top 3 teams in the East. I don't know, what the Knicks, what their long-term outlook is, but they're going to be good next year. It's not like they're going to fall off a cliff, right? They have all of those guys in place. Boston might have some tough decisions to make this offseason in terms of, I actually think they're going to move Drew Holiday at some point because their tax bill is going to get completely outrageous.
Do you think Drew or Porzingis?
One of the two.
Okay.
One of the two. I think Porzingis is more central to what they do, but he is an injury risk as well. So I don't think it's crazy that you asked the question. But I do think they are going to have to make a sacrifice with one of their core players. Regardless, they're still going to be pretty good next year. I think that's pretty clear as well. So let's say the Sixers decide to run it back all of next year. And I'm going to give them your guy, Ace Bailey. A good rookie, but probably one who's not going to move the needle too much, right? Kind of more of a long-term project. Maybe he slots in and gives them Risache level play for this year. So good. Maybe he comes on at the end, but he's not moving the needle like Cooper Flagg would on really day one, and maybe Dylan Harper as well. Where do you think they slot into this Eastern Conference next year? Because the only team I'm looking at in the top 6 that could maybe take a step back is Milwaukee. And that's just because of the issues that Dame Lillard is dealing with right now. And I hope he gets better with the blood clot as well. And it just, is Giannis going to want to stay there for a long time? They're pretty much out of picks now. That's the one team that maybe will take a step back. But if they have Giannis, they're going to be pretty good. Mm-hmm. They're not going to take too much of a step back. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it as well, right? Atlanta, they got young guys. Now, I don't think that core has a championship ceiling, but
they'll be in the playoff
once
mix.
They get Jalen Johnson back, right? Yep. And Trey and Risache and Dyson Daniels, they got some guys. So I'm curious where everybody has them slotting. I'm looking at Orlando, who's had a pretty disappointing season, I would say, this year, just because they've had those 2 guys in place. They played a pretty competitive playoff series last year. Look, man, I think if the Sixers are able to get a rookie next year, I will be curious where a lot of people slot them in the preseason just because of the unknown of a lot of their star players, specifically Joel, where they slot in. Because I'm looking and it's going to be tough for them to move up again.
I would say, to answer your question, number one with Orlando, partially I think part of their season is just because of the injuries really knocked them back once you had Paolo Banchero go down first, and then Franz Wagner went down second. Then you had just a number of injuries that just started to compile for them. They just couldn't get it together, and I think that was their issue. They will be back next year, and I think they'll be a force in the Eastern Conference next year. So right now, I would say before the season, I had the Sixers in the top 3.
Yeah. Okay.
That was me. And for this upcoming season, stay as is, add Ace Bailey to the team, keep Quentin Grimes and ALLCITY. Do you keep them? Okay.
No, well.
One of the two?
Let's say keep Grimes.
Keep Grimes. All right, you keep Grimes, and your core is your starting 5. Oubre is part of that starting 5. Let's just say
Oubre's back.
Yeah, Grimes coming off the bench potentially with okay.
I mean, it's pretty good. If they
I'll say they're top 5.
Yeah,
I'll say they're top 5 just on the fact that Joel Embiid is, if he's starting the season, knowing that he's had this amount of time off, they've done whatever they were supposed to do. Whether it was surgery or something else, rest, rehab, to get him accustomed to being the player that he's going to have to now be going forward because of this injury impacting his career and how he plays. So with that, he's still very talented. Healthy Tyrese Maxey, I'm banking on that. And Paul George, if he has any pride, he's going to be coming back next year. He couldn't control the injuries, so he's going to be healthy again next season. You hope there are no bone bruises or any other injury that messes him up in the beginning of the season that throws his game off. So I would put him right there, Rich. I would put them right back in the top 5. Doesn't mean that they're going to be 4-3, 2-1. They could just simply be 5 and be right out of hosting a home court. But I'm putting them top 5 because when you're still talking about 3 potential All-Stars, a Rookie of the Year candidate type of player that you're drafting, he may not be a franchise changer because it may take a few years before you really have to see that type of impact on this roster and for the franchise. But I'm putting him right in the mix. Jared McCain is back healthy. We didn't mention him tonight, but I would put them in the top 5. And that is with the respect of what Detroit is doing, getting Jaden Ivey back.
Sure.
Having Milwaukee come back, maybe Dame is okay. A full training camp with Kyle Kuzma, so they no longer have the Chris Middleton piece and all of that.
They'll also be a year older, too.
They'll be a year older.
As will the Sixers.
For sure.
With everybody, but Maxey and McCain, obviously, a year older is a good thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially McCain because, the time off that he's missed. What, he played 19 games, 18 games, whatever he did. So I would put them there. And I respect Atlanta. I love Jalen Johnson's game.
Sure.
And I'm very curious to see what Pat Riley does to pull out of his hat to add a player for the Miami Heat.
I don't think they're in a great spot right now.
I'm curious, though, to see if they can find a way to swoop in and get in the mix. What if it's you get the number 1 overall pick, Utah, and they have flag and they decide to move on from marketing? What if they do something like that? I don't know.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. So, but that being said, I keep them in the top 5.
So I think it would be top 5, top 6 if you're getting.
I said top 5 for a reason.
If you're getting a decent,
because I don't think they're going to be right there hovering. Are they going to be a play-in team or not? I think they're going to be top 5.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on what Joel you get. If you get 80% Joel of the past few years, I think that is a pretty significant step down. But because of the other pieces that you're bringing back, Maxey and McCain and all these guys, I think I agree with you where they're probably towards the lower end. Right. Now, the reason they've been in the top 3 for, the past 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it has been, I know they were 4th the 1 year, is because of Joel, right? And that one guy completely raises everybody else's game. That is the big question. I know it's an impossible question. I just think, man, like the Eastern Conference,
it's good.
As much as everybody talks about the West, there is a lot of talent in the NBA.
It's good.
Even it's because we have been watching a team that really does not have a lot of talent, which is what we were talking about for the first 6, 7 minutes of the pod. But the point is, like a team like Portland that is not actively trying to pull the plug, like they just got a lot of dudes, right? And a team like Toronto that's not very good. If they were playing Brandon Ingram, if they were playing quickly tonight, they got a lot of guys too. Like there are not a lot of teams that are hopeless. You have a team like Washington. Okay, they look like kind of an old school bad team. Anyway, there's just a lot of talent. And, if the Sixers do get it back together, and man, I really hope that is the case because that'll make our pods a lot much more fun.
We only think about us here, folks, and you.
Exactly. I'd like to watch some more competitive basketball into March and into April. That would be great. But anyway, it's going to be tough because I see a lot of teams in the East that are not hopeless, right? They have some interesting pieces and they have some things to build around.
Yeah. So we're going to get into a couple of super chats that we have, but I wanted to point out something that Brandon said. Brandon from New Jersey, our friend in the chat. Brandon said, first of all, I'm going through it because of the tanking situation, knowing how much I do dislike tanking, right? So I'm beside myself with the tanking, and, we'll go from there. And then he also points out that Kyle Kuzma sucks for the Milwaukee Bucks. So, a lot of ifs. Yeah, there are a lot of ifs, but that's that's the hypothetical of the question. We can say, if the Orlando Magic, if the Atlanta Hawks, if the Milwaukee Bucks, we can do a lot of ifs. So it also puts them in the mix with the rest of these teams where you have your top 4 probably firm of New York, Boston, Cleveland, and that's 3 of your firm ones. Yeah, so then you go 4 on out. There's an if for every franchise of why they could be 4, 5, 6, and maybe make a Cleveland-like jump up to maybe 2 instead of 1 or something along those lines. What if the Boston Celtics move the wrong player and Drew Holiday and keep Kristaps Porzingis? What do you do? So there's a lot of ifs and with this whole thing. So, but I will say firmly top 5 with them for the basketball team. When you were saying that about Embiid, because Embiid is the key, and I see a lot of people when they're talking about Joel, if Joel will be healthy, like Neil says, to play 60 games, you have a full confidence that he will be good enough to make the 76ers a top 5 team.
Just depends what level of player you're getting for
so
those 60 games.
So I looked at his numbers here for the games played for his career. Obviously, his rookie year, 31. We know about that. They first and that was the last time that they did not make the playoffs, folks. So this is the first time in 7 years that they have not made the postseason because of his injury this year as well. So 31 in the first year, 63, 64, 51. That was the COVID 51 and 51 back-to-back years. And we know how that was all impacted with the COVID stuff going on in
Bump
general.
that up at least 7 more games,
Yeah.
probably.
So that's about, let's give him 60.
Yeah.
Let's give him 60. And then you have 68, 66, 39 last season, and 19 this campaign. So to your point, and to Neil's point, I even saw Vinny in there as well, even with the if of Joel Embiid, is that we've seen it where he's elevated, but he was MVP guy when he's playing 68, 66, 51, where he's elevating the level of play of everyone around him, but he's MVP Joel Embiid. Yeah. What level are we getting? Are you still getting a 25 a night Joel Embiid where he can give you 8 to 10 rebounds a night, still protect the paint? You know where he is mid-range. He's going to get to the free throw line because, hey, say what you want. You can have bad knees, but that ball fake and that rip through is going to get somebody off their feet and get you to foul or reach in, and he's going to get to the free throw line. It may not be to the tune of 11, 12 a night, but it might be 8, and we know how good he is. But so it depends on what type of Joel you get. But to your point again, he was playing 51, 51, 68, 66, and he impacted the people around him.
At an MVP level, too. Right?
At an MVP level.
Yeah, so it does, can he play 60 games at
And that was top
level?
3, like you said. One fourth seed, but other than that, they were in the top 3.
Yeah,
a lot.
One 4 seed, that was a weird year. That was the Simmons holdout year, and Harden came in late. They really didn't have a ton of chemistry by that point.
That was 21-22.
Yeah, they were a top seed. So let me ask you another question, because Joaquin mentioned this into the chat. He wants to work Jared McCain into being a starter next year. What do you think of that? Because I think it somewhat depends on
That's a tough one, Joaquin.
on who is here.
Because we in this case, Joaquin, we put Bailey as the draft pick.
Yeah,
He's probably starting as a top 3 pick in the front court. So now he doesn't have to, because if he's not ready, they don't have to start him, but he can still play 20 minutes off the bench and ease his way into the starting lineup. It's going to be tough when you're looking at the defensive stuff from Kelly Oubre and bringing him off the bench and having him with Paul George in the starting lineup. So you have your 3 slotted in, and if McCain, you have 3 options of McCain, Grimes, and Oubre. I don't know where you're going. I really don't know, unless you feel like Grimes is more of he can fit in with the second unit, come off the bench and just start firing things up and get you going. Where Jared McCain is going to have to feed off of maybe a few others to get himself going, but we saw that he can do the same thing. So that's going to be a great conversation for us here on the show of who's the 4th and 5th starter for this group, including Bailey, if he is the draft pick. That's going to be a really fun conversation, Joaquin, to bring that up as a guy that we wanted to start this year. But when you're talking about next year, Grimes wasn't here when McCain was playing, and neither was Ace Bailey.
I feel pretty good about the guard depth on this team, and that's even before they could get a pick that even it bolsters it even more. If it's a Dylan Harper or it's the kid from Illinois, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. I'm already getting roasted for pronunciation in the chat tonight.
I got it for you. There you go.
Kasparis, yeah,
or Cass.
But I like the depth on this team, and it's been such a weird year in that there's been so much disappointment, and yet when you look at the guards, when you look at what Jared McCain was doing in November, I mean, that came out of nowhere for the most, not out of nowhere. We knew, he was an intriguing player, but he was really good right away and just showed like an elite skill in his shooting that he has the chance to be pretty darn good. That's one. Tyrese Maxey, a little bit of an up and down year, and a lot of that is because of the context he was playing in and that a lot of his other teammates were in and out of the lineup. But Tyrese Maxey in January, for the most part, there was like a 30-game stretch in there. Best basketball of his career. Best passing I've seen.
You kept saying it. You sniffed that one out at like game 5. He's like, wait a minute, this dude is unbelievable.
He went to a new level. And in fairness, like he was not playing they weren't winning a lot of games in those. In fairness, though, like they weren't going to win those games, right? They just didn't have enough talent around them. But he was lifting up his teammates and making them better. And then you have Grimes at the end, which completely came out of nowhere. First, it comes out of nowhere because you didn't even know he was going to be on the team. That was a pretty crazy trade when it happened. That was not on our radar, that Caleb Martin was going to be the guy that got moved. And then Quentin Grimes playing the best basketball of his career by a mile in meaningless games for the most part, in fairness, but not his fault. I mean, he's scoring efficiently, his rebounding's up, his passing's up, scoring at the rim. So even in this very lost season, I feel pretty good about those three guards next year, where if you move into next year, yeah, I get it. You're probably not going to have championship expectations just based off those three guards, but those are three young dudes who had different stretches of this season that were pretty darn good and pretty promising. And I'd be excited to watch those guys play. But back to Joaquin's point, yeah, I don't know how you would stagger them because one of them has to come off the bench, you would think.
Good training camp problem to have, I'd imagine, for Nick Nurse and the coaching staff, if Nick Nurse is, in fact, the head coach. We have some super chats that we want to sneak in here as well from Bernard, both of them from Bernard, going with the hate tanking in all caps. Does not like it. When you cheat the game, it never loves you back. Hope y'all right. Very disappointed in Maxey for going along with this crap. Here's the problem, though, Bernard, when you say you hate that. San Antonio did it, and they got Tim Duncan, and they had a dynasty. You know,
OKC
is doing it right now. I mean, done it right now.
A couple years ago, they weren't very good.
They weren't very good, Bernard. And
Cleveland was pretty bad for a few years there. Now they're good. Yeah, that's the tough thing about it.
That's the tough part.
I understand why you don't like it.
And I'm with you. I don't like it either.
I don't like it either. But look, the Sixers did it for 3 years. And then once they got both of their guys healthy, 50-win team automatically. So I'm not sure it's actually proven out that it doesn't help.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't like it either, though.
I don't like it either. And again, this is just a special case for this year where they are where they are. We agree.
No, we're not going to be asking for this more.
No. After this is it. You do your job in putting together a team, even when you lose a starter.
Because if
you can still keep your head above water and fight for a playoff spot.
Because if you get the pick this year, there's still very light protections on it next year. I'd much rather, even if it's like worst case scenario, you're fighting in the play-in, you're a 7, you're an 8 seed, whatever it is. I'd rather do that next year.
Yeah. Yep. Because if you're not getting number 1 and getting AJ from BYU, then, what are you doing? So there's that. Bernard also says, if we get the Duke center, Malawak, then worth it.
Man, there might be some...
Not at number 3.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think there's just going to be some wildly different opinions on taking someone like Malawak. I actually think
Please win this lottery. So you not just win it and get the number 1 overall pick. Please keep the pick because I want to have these discussions for a month after they keep the pick.
Yeah. I am more with Bernard on that, though. I actually think that kid could be pretty good. Now, if you're planning to pay Joel Embiid for a few years, I don't actually think that's the right move. I'm intrigued by that kid.
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too. But, he's in the mix.
Yeah.
He's in the mix with the other guys that they have, and we've talked about all of them, and we will continue to talk about them as we go along. Starters tonight, first of all, Grimes and Yabusele out. So that's now 10 Sixers out tonight. So that means a 51st starting lineup for the 76ers of Bona, Council. Whew. That's right there. You're like Bona, Council, Edwards, Walker, and Butler. That is your starting 5 tonight against the Toronto Raptors. Scotty Barnes playing. RJ Barrett should be playing then, if that's the case, with Quickly and Jakob Poeltl out. That is your 51st starting lineup of the season, Rich.
There we go.
Doing a good job there, Coach. Sit him down. Sit him down. Let's get to the Bet365 Pregame Picks, brought to you by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. It's never ordinary at Bet365. 2 Sixers tonight just because it was like, I don't know. Let's just go with the 2 Sixers tonight. Starting off with Justin Edwards, over 1.5 threes made. That was his number for the starting off. That was it. That's the odds. 1.5. I'm taking it. And then a Dembona, despite the fact that Toronto might be able to find some ways to rebound. Scotty Barnes just crashed the glass and all. A Dembona, 7+ boards, man. That boosts us to plus 110 on the night for Bet365. Rich, I thought those were two pretty decent opportunities right there.
I'm more worried about the Bona boards. I actually think Edwards is going to get his 2 threes. He's gonna
Bona boards even in the starting role.
Are they going to get enough stops?
Well, I mean, even if you shoot 50%,
yeah,
you still you're still rebounding a decent amount of those shots.
Yeah, I just, maybe he gets 5 or 6. That's kind of the issue.
Fair. Yeah.
And what if he's going for some blocks too? You don't
and
get
in foul trouble.
You just don't get
Out
the
of
boards
position
on those too, right?
Out of position. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you affect the shot too and do the right thing.
All right. But if you like it, plus 110, it's available at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Once again, use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So last year, I saw this in the chat. We should actually look this up. We'll look this up for postgame. I believe they have topped the Grizzlies now.
So the record I thought was 52.
Was it 52?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Grizzlies set the record last year, and they set it with 50. Now, this article might have come a couple games before the end of the season, so maybe they threw a couple more at the end of it.
Okay.
I think this is going to be a record.
Yeah, they probably threw out some different starting lineups. If Bagley starts at once, you're breaking the record because he hasn't started yet.
Oh, Bagley's starting.
Yeah. There you go. I like it. All right. That'll do it for us,
One
folks. One more. And let's see what the 76ers and the Raptors do. Big game. No Nets tonight. No Nets. So all you can do is push yourself. And John P says he thinks it's 51. So you guys are probably right. If I'm wrong, I thought it was 52. If it was 51, they have tied it now. They're going to break the record at some point with the 7 games remaining this season.
Break it.
You know they are, especially the last game where nobody plays. Of course they're going to break that record. All right, so that'll do it for us. We'll be back after the game. Everybody enjoy it. Sixers lose. It'll be their 8th consecutive loss. And with it, there'll be a full game back of the Nets and then a full 5 games back of the Raptors, where you can pretty much count them out for catching the Toronto Raptors. For Bree and Rich, I'm Devon. We'll talk to the guys from the arena a little bit later, and we'll talk to all of you for Sixers postgame for Sixers Raptors right here on the PHLY Sixers postgame show presented by Bet365. Enjoy the game.
We all silly like the mayor.